Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. So, well, it is really hard to add something up to this point concerning the topic of sustainable cities. It has already been stressed how they are important in modern nations. Cities are the place in which innovation occurs, are the place in which new technologies are born, in which new societal things happen and then spread to the other part of the nations. And so they are the centers in which the new crisis that we're going to face needs to be addressed. Cities, just like us, lives in a state of constant crisis. We've just experienced the COVID-19 crisis, after another crisis in 2008, and then a war crisis which will lead eventually to another economic crisis. And if you think that we can already foresee that other things are going to happen, so we will have problems with climate, the lack of water, and the only way in which we can address these issues in an efficient manner is with knowledge, science, and technology. And when I say knowledge, science, and technology, I mean that there is something which is very much needed to start the whole process, which is data. Data is at the core of every scientific advancement, and it's lacking most of the time in cities. Data, of course, by itself, it's not enough. It's missing. Sometimes you don't have it. You cannot really understand what's going on in certain cities. For example, how the way in which people move within cities has changed after COVID-19. In many cases, we know. In many others, we don't. But of course, that is not enough. Data has to be processed. You need ways to process data, to extract value, information from data, and to make forecasts out of it, to steer the way in which cities should be designed in the future. And there are many examples, successful examples, in which this virtuous process of getting data, extracting information, and then informing public decision has already been applied. My, well, I can say colleague here, Luca Montuori, has a lot of them to explain to you today. So I'll leave the word to him for a while. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Bernardo. Thank you for the invitation. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today. It's about 2 years ago, I was here with Luciano Pietronero and some of his researchers to discuss how the idea of a research center in the city of Rome could be very important, even to plan the city. And we discussed a lot with Vittorio Reto and with Bernardo in the past, how we could deal making the data and the description of the city part of the planning of the city. Because, you know, cities go through crisis. They change very slowly. We used to discuss about resilient cities, so how they don't change, let's say, in crisis. But now with data, we have a lot of things and elements to deal with, to change cities and to plan cities in a different ways. So we have to deal with this complexity and high-speed transformations, and on the other part, with the instruments that are slow. So we have to deal through strategies and plans. That is not so evident for us. So as urbanists, we deal with laws, with very boring elements. And on the other part, we are really interested in how description and narration of cities, because these are two elements that are very important, because data not only can describe cities in an objective way, they can narrate how cities are really living. So it's more in a subjective way. For example, we discussed about an example in Barcelona. In Barcelona, the municipality is dealing with data and making co-projects with the IoT elements with citizens, so dealing with behaviors of citizens. And this switch from a static representation of the city that is typical from urban plans to that dynamic representation of cities. And this is what Sony Lab and, of course, a lot of researchers can help to switch from an old determinist, let's say, view of the city, to a new dynamic and strategic view of the city.
Yes, you also mentioned at some point that what this kind of approach that we at Sony CSL are capable of doing can help to bring to light a lot of virtuous systems that are already in the city but are not known. For example, I do remember that you mentioned some ecosystems of economic activities that are actually hidden, that are excellent centers, but you just don't know they're there.
Yes, as some speakers said before, we are not sure about nothing today. So I think that policies for the city had to be able to build the infrastructure to let things happen. So we have a strong informal life in the city that is not illegal. Let's say informal. Is a way to stay in the city, very important. And we can't plan everything in the city. It's important to have the infrastructure to let all this ecosystem live, to bring them to light. In the last years in Rome, we discussed about ecosystem for agri-food, for example, with the Camera di Commercio, or even the Technopole that today arrived to a formal definition, started discussing with the universities about a new pole in Rome to bring all these elements together to let these ecosystems live, not in a static, let's say, adding new laws, new schemes, and new elements, but bringing really infrastructures through data and strategic views exactly to go in this direction.
Yes, and what I'd like to stress here as a conclusion of our very brief dialogue is that I think that Sony CSL has all the capabilities to be a relevant actor in this change that's going to happen in the future. When I say relevant actor, I mean that we have the capabilities not just to generate data with this important IMX 500 POC that has already been mentioned, which can get a lot of information on what's going on, but also to process the data and extract value from it. So we just don't collect it. We understand it. We provide relevant information. And moreover, we can make forecasts and help decision makers to design new scenarios for the future. We have a very interesting platform, 15-Minute City platform. It's a very hot topic nowadays that help you in this direction. So you can see what's going on there from the data that we have. You can understand what's going on, and then you can design something new from your ideas. And what we do is help you understand the impact of what you want to do with the city. So as a last remark, I really like the idea here at Sony CSL Rome that we try to be part of a larger ecosystem of public administrations, of enterprises, of universities that go in this direction to have an impact with data science, with data processing, and with sustainable cities in general. So I guess that's it.
Yes, I think that's it. Just a last remark. What is very important for cities is to be able to deal with data, and not only to receive from different institutions data, but even to be owners of data and provide data to people who analyze to address policies. Otherwise, we receive policies from private sector, and of course, this is not the case of Sony, but we have to be able to deal with all this structure and to address exactly in the direction that strategists and policymakers want to go for the future of the cities. This is very important, and this is what we should discuss, even, I think, in the city for the future.
Yes, of course.